Hey guys, Isabel here. Welcome back to Reeled In. Today is another Dyad Discuss for episode 2 of the Book of Boba Fett. With me, I have my friend Connor. Hello, Connor.
What's up?
Okay, I have to say, personally, I believe a huge improvement from episode 1.
I agree. I think a
I
lot of people agree. It's just a better episode.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me wonder why they just did not extend episode 1, like have the beginning of when Boba is like walking around Mos Eisley, and then just have that whole backflash be episode 1. So you see why he like wants to rule with respect and not fear, and then after episode 1, you actually understand why he wants to do that.
Mos Espa, by the way.
Oh, Mos Espa. Okay.
Well, I didn't know before this episode too. I was like, it's either Mos Espa or it's Mos Eisley, but they didn't go to the Notorious Cantina, so I'm like, it's gotta be the other one. It's also bigger. Um, yeah, I kind of agree because like although this episode and most people's opinions, I think, was a lot better than the first one. We went back to the flashback. I'm like, oh, we're still doing these. I agree that I think either the first episode should have been entirely the past and then we catch up, or we kind of catch up and then do a whole flashback thing. So like Hawkeye kind of did the same thing where it would constantly do these flashbacks. And it's like, I I definitely would have kind of liked this like all at once,
Mhm.
but that's just me.
I think if they did do it all at once, it would definitely have saved a lot of confusion. And I know from certain people, anger and disappointment for episode 1, and would have
Yeah.
even like started off episode 1 and left the audience with more like excitement for what's to come. Because personally, after episode 1, I was still going to continue to watch the episodes, but I was not really excited.
Well, it gives you a little bit of like whiplash too,
Mhm.
because you're going from one thing to another thing, back to the current thing, and then back to the to the thing in the past. Um,
Yeah, there's like 3 different timelines I had to keep in my head, and I'm like, which one are we on right now?
yeah, and then when you have like a moment like you do where you forget all of Star Wars like all at once, it makes it really tough. Um, but that's even for a Star Wars fan. So the people who aren't as like neck deep in the fandom as we are, and certainly other people are, I think
Mhm.
it could be a little confusing. Like if I were to introduce this to someone who hasn't seen any of this yet, it'd be like, okay, right off the bat, 1 and 2, we're watching them together because they stay together. And I hate to keep comparing the Marvel shows too, but it's kind of those are kind of the only things that are out right now. But like WandaVision, right? So episodes 1 through 3 don't necessarily stand too great on their own. But if you watch at least those 3 episodes together as in like one sitting, and then you keep moving on, like as a whole,
Mhm. I
sorry.
believe didn't they also release episodes 1 and 2 of WandaVision as well as Hawkeye like at the on the same day?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could kind of binge 2 of them together and they just sit a little bit better. So like last time when we were wrapping up, you're like, I give it a this out of this. What do you give it? I'm like, I'm gonna wait out of 10 because right now it's not looking too great, but it's not the whole thing.
Mhm.
So, it's starting to build itself back up.
I was also kind of going back and forth. I'm like, should they have just did the whole background, or should they have, you know, present and then the rest of the background? But I do think we did need the present to kind of be like, this is his thoughts. Why are these his thoughts? Because we don't really understand why. And then you have the whole background, to understand like why he acts this way, why he thinks this way. But then other part of me is like, why didn't, like, if you kept it in this format, why didn't you just put the 2 episodes on the same day?
Because like
So
even the Bad Batch, right? The first episode was over an
70
hour.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was over an hour long, but it did a great job at really setting up everything that was kind of going to be said throughout the series.
Mhm.
um so it was just a little strange, but it's in the grand scheme of things, I'm sure it's neither here nor there, so we'll see where it goes from here.
All right, now getting to the actual episode. Okay, so I think because I am a Star Wars fan, I'm sure there's more people out there who are more of a Star Wars fan than I am. They read the comics and everything, which I don't do.
Yeah, more than me.
Because I think this whole show, like this show, out of all the Star Wars stuff I've ever watched, is definitely going to make me, I think, question everything because I know so little of Boba Fett. I've never thought to know more about Boba Fett. I've never been like entranced by him. So like even if you watched my reaction, I was still confused about certain things. But does the Order of the Night Wind, is that like something that's depicted in the comics, or is that these kind of like, you don't know?
I don't know. So admittedly, I haven't read as much of the new expanded universe content.
Mhm.
Obviously, there are some other people who it's their bread and butter. Yeah, not to my knowledge. There were a couple things that showed up in this episode that I was like, oh, it's like little Easter eggs.
Mhm.
And I wanted to point out too that almost everything that I mentioned in our discussion last time coincidentally showed up one way or another in this episode. I just thought that was kind of funny.
Nice.
From the Pike Syndicate to
Mhm.
just the underworld and the huts. And I just thought it was kind of interesting.
Well, it
I'm
means
like, all
you
right,
were,
maybe we are on the right track
yeah, you were
here.
on the right thought process. Well, the Night Wind is obviously, they do explain it. They're a group of assassins, basically.
Yeah.
Um, and then he says that he was sent by the mayor, and then we saw the mayor a lot quicker than I thought we were going to. But it's kind of obvious the mayor is just like another figurehead in a way. Like he's obviously not the one, behind the scenes, basically pulling all the strings. So that does leave me to wonder who still could be this big bad that I think we're supposed to be getting in this series.
I don't think it's just one. I don't think it's just one big bad. So I think I mentioned this last time in talking about the crime syndicates. Like there's, with the exception of Maul, right?
Mhm.
At the time of the Clone Wars and even a little bit afterwards, before he prioritized other things, there wasn't really like one singular person. And even then, you have other syndicates throughout the galaxy,
Mhm.
um, kind of doing their own thing. So the only thing that I can think of is that like Jabba was sort of that big bad like one, but even then you still have other syndicates. You still have the Pikes who kind of do their own thing. You still have the Black Sun. It's a lot more complicated than I think just one big bad wolf.
Yeah,
I think there's a pack.
true. Yeah. We
Dave would
also
Dave would love this analogy.
we also may be getting I feel like a Crimson Dawn reference soon,
I
perhaps.
hope so. I hope so. I saw that circulating. I'm like, it would actually be nice to see Kara
Mm-hmm.
again.
Because I feel like unlike you, I watched the Clone Wars in like one huge stretch, like like in like 24 consecutive days. I watched the Clone Wars, so a lot of that information is just kind of jumbled together. But it was mentioned, the Crimson Dawn, during the Clone Wars, but then I feel like it was mentioned and then it kind of was like pushed to the side. I think like it was
Yeah.
mentioned and then we didn't really get to see too much of it later. So I feel like it would be nice to, like, it was mentioned in there and then have it brought back here in the Book of Boba Fett. Be kind of cool. And it's also still super obvious that the mayor also does not respect Boba. And I feel like he has to know that people are not, taking him seriously in this town.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes back to our whole like, I'm gonna rule out of respect and not fear. And it's like, okay, but that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
That's not gonna work on Tatooine. That's not gonna work with what you're trying to do.
Mhm. What I think is
You know,
interesting is that it's showing that Boba's tactics aren't working, but it is showing that Fennec's tactics are working. Like the whole Rancor pit where she got the Night Wind assassin to talk. Like
and
she's
it's just
just
empty and there's just like a little pack rat,
yeah.
a womp rat.
I am excited because I think now we're done with backstories. I do think the backstories need to stop unless you just do a quick like 2-minute backstory here and there. But like if you keep having these 30-minute long backstories, you're not going to be able to, tell the story you want to tell in the present.
Yeah. Well, I don't think like they need to stop. I think it's like with season 2 of Mando, right? Some of the pacing just felt kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
So either it draws out for way too long and you kind of lose interest, or it's going all over the place and you kind of get whiplash. You're just like, wait a minute. Given what we've seen with Mando and what we've seen with the way that John writes and directs this stuff, I don't think it's going to be that drastically different.
What I also think is a problem for Boba Fett with the whole like wanting people to respect him is that he has a previous image and reputation that is kind of like holding him back from being this like huge crime lord that he for some reason still, I don't know why, but he wants to be one. And that is that he is a bounty hunter, or was a bounty hunter, and people still associate him with being a bounty hunter, as you see when the mayor is like, thanks for turning this guy in, here's your payment, and he's like, I don't do that anymore, even though he just did it. Also, the disrespect of that tribute, like, or the payment, like that was so small. The bag was
Well, you
so
see,
small.
Fennec too. She grabs it. She just like she
She's like,
looks at it.
this
She's
is
like,
it.
yeah,
I kind of, I would honestly rather see Fennec as the head crime boss than Boba Fett, which I think might happen by the end
it's
of the
possible.
series.
It's possible. I don't think she would betray him. I
No.
definitely think like either something would happen to him or he would pass on the baton and be like, all right, it didn't work for me, but they seem to like you, so here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Um uh Real quick, someone pointed this out on TikTok. In the Force Awakens visual dictionary, there's a member of Conja Club with the last name of Shand.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like back in 2014, 2015. And then we're just looking forward to the present with Fennec Shand. It's like
You got
either
relative.
it runs in the family or that's what it becomes, is the Conja Club.
Maybe. Okay, so the litter that Boba Fett refuses to like be carried around on had been mentioned like 3 times previously. So I was like, I knew it'd have to come in at some time. And right as I thought that, like the twins came into play. And for some reason, I did not really expect to see more Hutts, but it makes sense that they would be like in this show.
I'm glad that there were.
You're glad? Okay.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I just really have no idea what story this is going to tell. So whenever there's new characters, I'm honestly genuinely surprised that they're there.
There's a couple of new characters that showed up that had a lot of people really excited, but we'll put a pin in it for now. With the Hutts showing up, like I said, I'm glad that they did. One, because I mentioned it last time, but considering what I said, like it kind of makes sense. So I don't know why they didn't do anything while Bib Fortuna was in charge, but
Yeah,
I think maybe because that was such a short amount of time, or like I don't know if he got them off on like a technicality, or if just because he wasn't a threat to them, or I
probably. Or
don't really
maybe
know what the deal was.
he was like paying the Huts to still like rule or something. Like he was like Split Fortuna, I'm pretty sure was also just like another figurehead too.
Oh,
So
for sure.
like,
But I
yeah,
feel like he didn't do anything. Like
probably not.
obviously he just kind of sat there and he got fat,
Hmm.
which was
He was big.
that was an unhealthy. I did not know that Twi'leks could get that big, and I
Yeah.
know that that's kind of supposed to be like homage to Jabba, but like their species, like they're built like that. Like he was a muscular Hutt, apparently.
Jabba.
Yeah, yeah,
Really?
uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah,
Okay.
Jabba was muscular for a Hutt.
Hmm.
I think Zero, remember the purple guy from the Clone Wars?
Yeah.
Apparently he was small for a Hutt.
Yeah.
So they're all built differently, but like,
Who was the baby? Do you remember Ahsoka and Anakin? They had to get like this baby Hut.
oh, oh yeah. Rhoda, I think.
Were the
Because I
twins
don't,
ever mentioned in the Clone Wars? Because we did
not
go to a
not
couple.
directly, not
We had,
directly, but we've seen the council.
yeah.
Like when Maul, well, there's a couple things. So there's the whole issue with the hunt for Zero, right? and
Mhm.
Obi-Wan and Quinlan Boss go to know how to, we see some of the Hut Council, and then we see them again when Maul is like, I'm going to own everything that you have
Yeah.
in exchange for your lives. And they're just like, what a joke.
So then technically these are like two new characters that we haven't
As
really.
as far as I know, they could have
Okay.
been mentioned in the comics, but I don't think they, like, if they were, it was in passing because I don't see anybody else talking about it.
Mhm.
And there are people who definitely are way more invested, like I said, in these things than I am.
And another new character that happened like right after the twins is the Wookiee, who
Yeah,
I got a comment because I was like, is he a Wookiee? Is he not a Wookiee? He's kind of short.
sure.
I thought he was short for a Wookiee because I'm used to Chewbacca-sized Wookiees, and he didn't look Chewbacca-sized to me personally. I could be totally
I think
wrong.
I think Chewie's just really tall.
I thought all Wookiees
Yeah,
were pretty tall.
yeah, Black Chrysanthemum, I think is his name.
I'll tell you because someone commented.
So he supposedly had fought Obi-Wan. I know that from the Obi-Wan comics.
Apparently, he hates Wookiees because they neglected him as a child, and he ran away and became a gladiator. And Boba knows him apparently because they were both bounty hunters for Jabba. So thank you to I am packing YT. Sorry if that's not how you pronounce your handle, but he or she or they enlightened me.
Yeah, people were excited. Like it's exactly like that Daredevil meme from Spider-Man. Where like people freak out, and then there's that one person's just like, yeah. 'Cause it's the people
Who is
who've
this?
read the comics and read the books, and they're like, oh my god, and they freak out about it.
Mhm.
Considering people are freaking out that much about it,
He's
I
obviously a
think,
big deal.
yeah, apparently. I know his scuffle with Obi-Wan, but that's kind of it. Like I've heard of other stuff, and I've started seeing other stuff as people are talking about it.
Well, it's better than me. I had no idea who he was. So I was like, a Wookiee. And then I was like, he's kind of short. And then he even said, he was like, yeah, gladiator. And I'm not like, when I was like, is he or is he not a Wookiee? But he is. Did you know who it was? Like the name, like right when you saw him?
No,
Okay.
no. I
Makes me
feel
feel a little bit better.
well, I thought it was for a hot second. That's I'm like, that's not Chieftain Tarful, is it? Right? Like that can't be
My
Tarful
immediate
because
thought
Tarful
was
wasn't.
Fallen Order with when we went to Kashyyyk in Fallen Order. That was my
Yes.
immediate thought process.
Yeah, that was Chieftain Tarful, but
Mhm.
Tarful didn't have black fur, so I'm like, but also he wouldn't have been a gladiator. Like he
Yeah.
was he was a leader and an activist for the Wookiees, like through and through. I'm missing something, and there was like Black Crab Sentin, and I'm like, oh, who's this guy? And they're like, he fought Obi-Wan. I'm like, oh,
Oh yeah,
okay,
him.
this guy.
And then that is all we get for the present of the episode. Then we get another backflash, another backstory. But before we get to the backstory, I want to ask you a question. So there's obviously a lot of similarities between this and Mando seasons 1 and 2. What do you think of those similarities? Like, do you kind of want this show to be like different?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, considering they're also two very different characters. Um, I get stylistically it'll be the same, like I said, with John, both writing and directing, same as he did with Mando. Um, but I want the story to be its own thing so
Yeah.
badly.
Well, I don't mean just with like story, because like obviously the music is very similar. You get the same composer.
Yeah,
The only difference is that you have more vocals in this Boba Fett series.
it's more like earthy. I know
Yeah.
that's like, well, yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
think it
the
also probably pays homage to Mora's background as well, a little bit with the
that too.
vocals. But like in this episode, you have the train, and then you have the people on the back of the train doing all these fight scenes, which is kind of exactly like I guess was that like a mining cart in season 2 of Mando that they were all like fighting on and in and through in one of the episodes with like
I think
the big four-wheelers basically.
I think so.
Yeah. So that was
I
another
think
similarity. And just kind of similarities like that. I'm like, okay, like we see where you're taking this from, but I also a little bit, and I can understand why, because they're both in a sense like these gunslingers,
So
but
if we're gonna compare apples to apples, I do want to say that I think this one was like I just like this one a little bit more. Because the one in Mando kind of felt like it just kept going on, going on, and going on and going. Like it kind of didn't move forward.
mhm.
So anybody remembers my analogy for that? It kind of felt very video game format,
Oh
where you
yeah.
fight one wave, that wave, you get over it, and then the next one comes, but they're a little bit worse. Then you defeat those ones, and then another one comes, and then another one comes, and you're not moving forward. Whereas like this one, he's literally moving forward in like physical direction too, as
Mhm.
well as like it's going on like in the story. I found it a little more interesting. It also has a lot to do with kind of where I think they were going a
To
little
show
bit.
that he's like a capable leader and a strategist,
And then
basically.
and then with the inclusion of the pikes and the spice trade,
Oh yeah,
which is
we should talk about that.
huge, which is huge. Like I said, mentioning it last time, I'm glad it showed up a lot earlier than I expected.
Yeah, that was another one. I was like, it took me a little bit of a while because I was like, they look really familiar. And then I was like, oh, they're the spice people. And I was like, I forgot the name. I was like, it took me forever. And I was like, the Pikes.
I
But then I
know.
was like, they're kind of short. I feel like I thought they would be taller, just like the Wookiee. And I was like, so this things like this, like my brain just kind of takes a little bit to catch up. But eventually I was like, it is the Pikes. Yes. Okay, cool.
Well, I mean, it's a couple things. So from a production standpoint, obviously, things translate differently from animated TV than they do in live action, as
Mhm.
we know, obviously, with things like Ahsoka and the introduction or the reintroduction, I should say, of those characters coming very soon.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, we saw a Pike in
Yeah.
Solo, and he wasn't terribly
Yeah.
big. I was just under the impression that their faces were built different,
As was
because
I.
they look more like mollusks,
Yeah.
but that could be just like a headdress thing. I don't know. Um, because they all three versions they translate very differently
Yeah.
from each other from an in-world standpoint. Different like not every member of the same species is going to look different, obviously. So a different race of pikes that look different.
I also think because I know in the Bad Batch we saw them, but I think that was
Mhm.
probably because I'm sure there are there's a hierarchy and levels, so I'm sure he was more like on top of the list a little bit more, and these were kind of like bottom tier a little bit. So there could also be
Yeah,
that as well.
yeah. Well, because like if you remember from the Clone Wars and then the Clone Wars saved and the
Mhm.
Bad Batch, like you don't fuck with the Pikes. So I agree with you. I think these are just people kind of doing the job, doing the dirty work.
Mhm.
And they're not the big heads. And I think, with power complex, maybe those people just happen to be both physically and politically bigger.
Yeah,
So
which makes me wonder now that there is a supposed toll on this new spice route. If the big ones of the Pike Syndicate are going to get involved because they probably won't like that. They have to pay a toll to get through the Dune Sea.
yep. So
So
going back to, I don't think there's just one big baddie. I think
yeah.
there's a there's a much bigger galaxy than I think a lot of us are thinking about.
What if like all three like big syndicates just kind of show up at once at the end and Boba's sitting there like, you know, I may not have thought this through.
I don't think that would be such a bad thing. As far as like the story goes, that would be pretty interesting. The Pikes, like I feel like I should start being in the background when you watch these episodes for the first time because I react very differently. Because I'll this is no shade to you, but I'll remember who these people are
Yeah.
and I'll get very excited. So I remember I was watching and one of them pops up and I go, "Is that a Pike?" And then they're opening the crates. I'm like, "Is that spice? Is that spice?" And he pulls out like a rifle. I'm like, "Oh, it's just weapons." And then one of them pours stuff out and they goes, "I'm like, it's spice, that's spice, it's the spice train." So
Yeah, it did take me a while because I think when they opened up like the top hatch and then I saw like the full face or like the mask that he was wearing, but I was like, wait a minute, I think I know what that is. I think I know those. So, what I did like about this episode is that we got a lot of background with the Tusken Raiders, and I do have to say, in terms of like scenes, like sequences and plot and everything, I liked where Boba and the Raiders are working together. I liked it better than when in episode like 1 when Mando and like the village are working with the Tusken Raiders. Because I just feel like it was better plot. Because I feel like, and this just may be my own opinion, but I feel like Mando working with the Raiders was very one-sided in terms of like what you were gonna get. And then, but this one, it's like Boba's helping the Raiders, but the Raiders are also helping Boba on like a physical and spiritual level. And then Boba's helping them with like they now know how to use like machines. So, but I think the help went both ways in this scene, whereas
yeah,
they just kind of wanted an egg from the crate dragon and
yeah.
Amando one.
With Mando too, there was like A to B to C, whereas like this kind of doesn't go in such a sequential order. But in Boba, like he's kind of just in a situation and he has to adapt. It's not necessarily like I need this one thing from you. Help me, I help you,
Mhm.
and we're Gucci, like it's a little more complicated than that. And I think that's something that a lot of people are really enjoying seeing, especially because we're seeing a completely different side of the Tuscans that we had before.
Mhm.
And another thing that people have been pointing out, and I think it's a good thing to keep in mind, is the Raiders from the prequels and the originals, mostly the prequels, like there's different tribes of Tuscans. So you have radicalized tribes or tribes that, behave very differently.
Mhm.
So I think something that's important to notice is just the generalization and the dangers of generalizing an entire society and an entire species. But
Mhm.
like the Tuscans too, they're native to Tatooine. The Tuscans and the Jawas.
Yeah.
Um, are Tatooine natives. So it's like you just got to be careful of the way that you generalize it. So the fact that this and even Mando is kind of blurring the line a little bit, I think is pretty interesting, and it makes for good storytelling too. So
Yeah, I do have like a new appreciation for the Tuscan Raiders, which I think was also a little bit of the point as well. And just to see that they're not, well, again, not all of them, as you were saying, are these like super vicious tribes
no,
people, but and it's just like I have like a new appreciation for like their culture because the whole like last 10 minutes of the episode I found to be quite beautifully done.
mm-hmm,
And that's when it gets really in depth. When Mando he makes his own gaffy stick, which I thought was very because it's like a rite of passage that he passed basically. And the whole like you take like kind of a trip out into the desert. It's not a new um thing that's been shown in media because the desert is very dangerous, but is also viewed as like an escape. It can be therapeutic and enlightening. So
mm-hmm,
I liked seeing all of that.
yeah,
And I got a very sad vibe, to be honest, when I was watching Boba's like vision, especially when he's watching his dad like fly away when he's on Camino.
mm-hmm,
But it's like a rebirth for him too.
yeah. That's another thing that a lot of people, myself included, really like in this episode. And it's like I've never been a huge Boba Fett fan, but I don't mind the humanization of him.
Mhm.
As long as he's a pretty dynamic character, which is really kind of starting to take shape because we were introduced to him in Attack of the Clones, like in chronological um order, right?
Mhm.
So we're introduced to him as like a little kid, and then you kind of grow up with him a little bit here and there with the Clone Wars. And then, everybody kind of has this notion of what he's like as a bounty hunter during the age of the Empire, but then you have like this new stage. So I think the evolution is just really interesting.
And he is kind of one of them now because you see at the very end of the episode, they are partaking in, I suppose they sort of dance. It's not a dance.
It's like a ritual.
Yeah, ritual. I wonder if that also pays homage because I don't really know too much, but I wonder if it also pays homage to like his own, I believe it's called Maori background.
Out
Because
of Tim's.
yeah, I think it might also pay homage to him, but he's also now, at least in that clan or tribe of the Raiders, the Tusken Raiders, he is like now one of them, which I liked, and I think it's a very nice ending for his whole like
That
storyline.
arc.
Yeah, that arc of the storyline, and that's kind of why I don't want too many more backstories. Like I said earlier, unless they're like 5 minutes long, and then you go back to the present. Because I just think that if you keep doing all these backstories, you're not going to have enough time to continue your present storyline.
I think the only backstory that we have left though is the introduction of Fennec. Like we're all caught up to, where he came into with the Mandalorian.
I mean, you kind of see. I don't know if it was an end credit scene or just like at the end of the episode, but it's like you see her laying in the sand and you see these boots like walk up to her,
Mhm.
and those boots are Boba Fett, essentially.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of told that at season 2.
The only thing I would maybe want to see is like why he wants to be a crime lord, because I still don't get that, and like how he went from his time with the Raiders to kind of like, well, I guess was he still with the Raiders when he found Fennec, and then he kind of just went from there.
And that's what I don't know. And I think
Okay.
that's probably what we'll see next is either he's like, all right, bye, and then move on from there. So I think maybe Fennec is kind of what will reground him into the whole bounty hunter crime lord sort of thing. And then the fact that his armor, which for a Mandalorian or otherwise, is a
Yeah.
big it's a big label.
Hmm.
So I think those between those two things, I think those are going to reground him to his roots, and then he'll kind of grow from there. This was much better of
It
an
was much,
episode. So
much better.
I'm still giving it I'm gonna wait for the series to finish. I'm gonna take a page out of the book of Isabel and I'm gonna wait out of 10.
I would give it, I want to say 10 out of 10, just because I like the symbolism of it. I just wish it was like consecutive, with episode one, kind of.
I do want to point something out. We haven't seen too much from Ming in this show, so that's why I really hope that next episode will be the last of the big flashbacks, but it'll be her flashback and their introduction.
That would be cool. Yeah.
The performances. I wanted to point out that I think, and I always feel like I have to do this because sometimes people will just overlook it. Is like Tim's performance in this is, I think, more representative of his ability as an actor. I think we forget that he's, a pretty popular household name, like not just portraying Jango Fett and Boba Fett.
Hmm.
That he's like been in other films and he actually has a pretty substantial amount of skill. And I hope we see that for Ming too, because everybody's kind of like a fan. But Ming especially, like she's genuinely a Star Wars fan. Like I'm watching all these little interviews and she just seems so excited to be there.
Hmm.
And I think it shows. So I think it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I definitely do think we'll definitely see more of Fennec, because we're getting these little bits of her, obviously, because it's focused on Boba's backstory right now. But the little bits we've been getting of her has been really good.
Yeah.
So I think we will. I think we'll get some more, and the little time we've had in the present, I think, has set up the vibe of what the rest of the present storyline is going to be, pretty well. So at least it has done that, and I'm very interested to see the next 5 episodes that we look at. Well, guys, that was our discussion on episode 2 of the Book of Boba Fett. Connor, thank you for joining me as always. Always appreciate your insight into Star Wars.
Thank you for having me.
Be sure to leave a like on the video. Comment what was your favorite scene on episode 2. What did you think of episode 2 overall? And be sure to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell so you know when I upload future Star Wars reaction and discussion videos. But guys, that's all I got for you today. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.